Welcome to the fastest stuff in town. Today we're Masechtas Avodah Zarah Daf Ayin Gimel. We're going to begin on Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, the second line from the top of the Amud by the Mishnah. Says Masnisin says as follows: Yain Nesach Aser. We already know that, obviously. Yain Nesach we've been talking about for some time now. But not only is it Aser, but it's Aser B'chol Shehu. Even the smallest amount of yain nesach which mixes with heter, it's going to aser the whole thing. That's first of all. Now, the Mishnah then says it depends. Yain biyayin, if let's say the yain nesach mixes up with other wine, or for that matter, umayim b'mayim b'chol shehu. If let's say that you use water as a form of libation for Avodah Zarah that fell into heter, that's b'chol shehu, because it's the same liquid. So it's a case like min b'minoi, so we say that it's aser b'chol shehu. Yain b'mayim, mayim b'yayin b'noisen tam. However, when it comes to a mixture, which they're two different things, that it's only if it gives a tam is what becomes aser. Zeklal, min b'mina b'mashu, shol b'mina b'noisen tam. Okay, pretty famous line. Says the Gemara, Kiyos Rav Dima Rav Yochanan. Hamar yain nesach mechavi sabar. Let's say a person is pouring yain nesach, and he's pouring it from a barrel, and he's pouring it into the bore, into the bottom pit. So afilu kol yom kuloi, even if you're pouring yain nesach all day, rishon bottle. So the drops that you're putting in are considered to be bottle, and therefore, because the pit is so large, let's say in proximity, in comparison to the yain nesach, you're pouring drip, so therefore it's considered to be bottle. Rashi says yain nesach shnafel b'bor kul aser. When we say that, that's mukila kishenafel b'chavis gedoyla. That's only if a massive amount pours out. The nishmam nafel kul ke'echad, like it all dumps out at the same time, so then it's not going to be bottle. However, if it's happening like drip, so then that is different. Tanan yain nesach aser v'aser b'chol shehu. So my lav they call nafli yisur l'go hatera. Apparently, our Mishnah is talking about where the yain nesach iser falls into the heter. Still, everything is aser. So how come we just said in the name of Rav Yochanan that if you pour yain nesach iser into a bore that it's bottle, it's mutter? It says lo they call nafli hatera l'go yisura. Maybe it's only because the heter fell into the iser. Fine. So we don't know the case, like we're saying, of the Isser falls into the heter, maybe we're more lenient. Toshma yain b'mayim. So if you have wine that falls into water, it's b'dais tam. My lab, the kanafel chamr di surah, like the wine, which is yain nesach on the top, is being poured l'may de hatera. So as we said, it should be mutter b'dais tam. So lo the kanafel chamr de hatera l'may di surah. Again, maybe it's only the situation where it fell into Isser, but if the Isser fell into the Heter, so then maybe the din we're not as strict. So Umidaresha b'maydi surah, since the Reisha is talking about where the water is the thing which is Usser, because the water was used as a libation for Avodah Zarah, so Seifa Nama b'maya di surah v'ktani Seifa mayim b'yayim b'noisin tam. So apparently, again, this should prove that it doesn't make a difference if the Isser is going into the Heter, the Heter is going to the Isser, it should still be B'naisin, it should still be B'chol Shehu, not like what we just said in the name of Rav Yochanan. So Rav Dimi, Kul Mastisin Hater L'go Yisur. No. The whole case is where Heter is falling into the Isser, that's why it's problematic. Vareisha, the call nafel chamer de hater l'maydi surah. Save the call nafel maydi hater l'chamer surah. Both of the cases is where heter is going to isser, and therefore we say even b'chol shehu it's a problem. However, when we're dealing where the isser is falling to the heter, maybe like we saw in Rabbi Yochanan, then we say that rishon bottle. Let's look at question 9. Lamandi Ermer Dahamar Mechavis Labor Afil Kohayim Arin Kamakama Bottle. So how do we explain our Mishnah that says that Yain is also b'mashahu? So as you said, our Mishnah is where the heter fell into the Isser. Okay, not in our case. The other case is where the Isser fell into the heter. And then we ask question now. Kul Aser. So on that we said kishenafel chavis gedolim nishbakul ka'achas el toichabor. As you said, the only time that it's okay is if it's like going in a slow pace. But if you have a huge barrel that pours out at the same time, then we do not say that. As you saw in Rashi. Okay, says the Gemara. Kiyasa, back in the Gemara. So Kiyasa Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yosef and Rabbi Yochanan Hamar Yain Nesach. Let's say a person is pouring Yain Nesach, which is Isser, mit sartzor katan, from a small jug, labor. And he's pouring it into a bore. So he said like this: if he's doing it, feel kolam kulai rishon bottle. Now what do we say over here? Because it's the isser that's going into the heter. However, davkat sirtzur katan. The only reason why we're leaning is because it's a small jug. Do nafish amude, because its flow is small. Of a chavis to nafish amude low. However, as we saw in Rashi, if let's say it just pours all out like a barrel, so then we will be strict even isser into heter. If you have yain nesach, which is isser that fell into a bore, but nafasham kitin shomayim, and then some water fell in there. So royines haheter kil enoi, because the yain nesach was in the bore, we view the heter as though it's not there. V'shar mayim rabin alav umevatlan oisai. And the rest of when we say that the water is abundant and it's mavatalit, so therefore the wine in the pit will be kosher. Says Rashi, V'lo amrinan hari neser kol hayayin. We don't say that the whole wine is aser. Never rabba hayayin alamayim. There's more wine than water. De havi chamaruba is a lot of wine. Ela be'isser shenafel greda misharinan. We only look at the isser itself. The ika mayaruba, and since there's so much water in comparison to the isser, that's why we'll be lenient over here. I guess is another kula. So that's what we say. Roines ahetekil einoi v'hashar mayim rabban v'levim b'vatalno. So Kiyas Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Rav Yochanan Lo Shanu. The only time we say this din is El Shenafel Kiton Shomayim Techila. That's only if the water fell in first. Of Lo Nafel Mayim Kiton Shomayim Techila. But if the water didn't go in first, Matzah Min Es Minoi V'Nior. So we say that the wine will combine to the Isser, which is it's a din of nior, like it arouses it, it wakens it up. So therefore, in the case where of a loy nafel kitin shomayim tchila, so if the water wasn't there first, but rather the wine, so therefore it's mischazik, it strengthens the isser, and therefore because of that, it becomes aser. Says Rashi, kalaymer nischazik v'nisoisif. Isuru v'rabi yain al mayim. There's more wine than water. The lashon near is ki'isha asher yavir mishnasa, a person who like awakes from his sleep. Kamo hanir b'layla. So that's what I mean. It arouses them. It wakes it up. So the only time we may be lenient is if the water went in first. But if the water did not go in first, then we're going to say that the wine combines to the isser and wakes it up. Some learn this a little bit differently on a different case. Yain b'yayin. So if let's say you have an isser of wine that falls into a heter of wine in which it's min b'minoi, so kol shehu. So even the smallest amount is aser. Some Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda Rabbi Yochanan Lo Shanu, that it's aser el shol nafar shem kitin shel mayim. If there's no water there, avol nafar shem kitin shel mayim. But if there was water, then roines a heter kil einoi. We view the heter wine as though it's not there. And therefore, v'hashar mayim rabban alav u'mevatanoi. So since there's more water than the wine, which is aser, so therefore it becomes bottle. So therefore, again, even though there's not good wine and good wine, but they don't add, it's not combined to therefore be more than the water. Rather, we say that we view the yain, which is beheter, as though it's not there. And we only look at the isser wine, and it's less than the water that pours into it. Okay. So ma'ika bein lidemasnila amasnisin bein lamasnila adaravin. It's the same idea. So what's the nafkamina? So man demasnila amasnisin lo boy tchila. Man demasnila adaravin boy tchila. What does that mean, boy tchila? Says Rashi, it doesn't matter if we pour the water in first or the water afterwards. It says Rashi, even the water went in afterwards. In other words, the wine of Heter and Isser for together, and then only afterwards the water was in. Nonetheless, the Mavatal and Mayim Isser, the water can still be Mavatal Isser. The other one says no, it is necessary that it's only if the water was there first, and therefore there was more water than the wine, and then the Isser wine comes in, so then only then will it be Batal. However, if the water only came in afterwards, so maybe we would say Nior, that it would combine wine to wine, and therefore now the wine is more than the water. Okay. Fine. Let's see if there's another question over here. TA, no. TB, no. Let's see, maybe TC. Okay, so let's just say this is right here. So this is the question: Yain nesach shenishbach labor, below nafel shamayim. There's no water in there. Ha'im batal. So is it batal that yain nesach fell into a bore? So it depends. So the wine in the bore is kosher, right? So it's possible. This is TC 28. If we're dealing with that it was poured quickly, so then that becomes more problematic, as opposed to but sirtzer katan deloy nafish amudeha. So in that case we'd be more lenient. This is what he writes. But sirtzer bottle, if you have it pouring in slowly the isser into the heter, then it's bottle. But if it's bechavius, if it's a barrel that pours, it's a machlokas actually. But if it pours all in one shot, like a barrel that broke, bottle. In that case, it would not be bottle. So, and that's what Rashi says over here as well. So that, in fact, is the answer. Okay, Itmar yain nesach shenaf labor. So you had yain nesach, which is iser, that fell into a bore of wine, which is heter. So you had wine and wine first, and then v'nafel shem kitan shomayim, and then a lot of water fell into it afterwards. So is the water, because the water is more than the yain nesach, but together with the yain nesach and the yain of heter is more than the water. So how do we view it? As we continue to ayin gimel midbeis. So we're Chizkiah. So we're going to focus on the two shitas. One is Chizkiah, higdilu b'iser aser, higdilu b'heter mutter. So if it increases the measurement of iser, then it's aser. If it increases the measurement of heter, then it's mutter. Says Rashi, higdilu hamayim v'hayayin b'iser. Let's say that the water and the wine combined got larger with the iser. Shenafel yain nesach b'soif. Let's say because the yain nesach fell at the end, the higdilu, and it got bigger than aser. So in other words, if first you had regular wine and regular water, and then only afterwards the yain nesach fell in, so then that's a case of higdil b'iser aser. This is the case where the iser, the yain nesach, caused the regular wine in the bore and the water to become problematic. Higdil b'heter mutter. However, says Rashi, shenafel yain heter b'soif. Let's say the good wine, kosher wine, fell in afterwards. So kfar batal yain nesach b'mayim, she'amayim rabul b'yoisel avadai. So basically, if all you had was a lot of water and then a little bit of yain nesach came, so the yain nesach was already batal. And therefore, if the wine comes afterwards, so then it's certainly going to be mutter. The problem is, again, if the yain nesach comes afterwards, then that's where the problem is. Rabbi Yochanan, no, feel higdil b'iser mutter. Even if, let's say, the yain nesach came at the end, nonetheless, it's still going to be mutter. Somewhere, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Zarah, Rabbi Yochanan, maybe this machlokus is based on b'plotet Rabbi Lezer Rabbanikim if we did not. And we had this before. Se'or shel chulin v'shel truma shenafel tzayich isa. So you have this dough, and in it there was sourdough, which causes it to ferment. And one of them is chulin, and one of them is truma. And obviously, a non-kohen can't eat the truma. So, however, a little bit chametz, a little bit lachmetz. Each of these sourdoughs the truma sourdough or the chulin sourdough independently did not have the capacity to be able to make that dough ferment. However, however, together the truma sourdough and the chulin sourdough combined will make it ability to ferment. So, Rabbi Lezer Omer, Achar Achron Ani Ba. We go after the last one. So let's first look at this Rashi. When Rabbi Yirmiyah Habi Kimle B'Tamayhu, the summer the time of the Chizkiya Mishum the Achar Achron Ani Ba. So we're going to think that the opinion of Chizkiya, who says that if it's higdil beheter, it's only higdil beheter mutter. Namely, if the heter comes in at the end, then it's mutter. But if the isser comes in at the end, the Ainesa comes in afterwards, it's going to be usser. So that's what Chizkiya says. It says v'savar the time the Chizkiya mishum the achar achar naniba. So maybe it's because you go after the last one, which is why if the last one is yain nesach, so we say it's usher. If the last one is heter, so then it's mutter, because we say achar ani ba. Hilkach nafal yain nesach b'saif. If yain nesach falls at the end, usher. Nafal kosher b'saif mutter. Okay, so it depends on what fell last. Rabbi Yochanan Kurabanan the Amar Ad Shehei Be'Iser Levadai Kedei Levatal Asamayim. It needs to be there by itself to be mevatal. Avol heter lo yitztarf imo levatal asamayim le'Iser. However, the heter cannot be mistarf to be mevatal l'mayim in the Iser. Okay. The Chama Amar back in the Gemara main shenafal Iser b'tchil ben b'saif eno Iser ad shehei bo kedei lahachmitz. It has to be enough for it to ferment. Now, B'Tizbra, you want to tell me that this machlokas is based on machlokas Chizkiya Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi lo shana el shekana b'seil kasa Iser. The only time is if the sa'or of the Isser was removed before the sa'ar of the heter. Otherwise, it would be Aser. Of a low kind of a silicas Isser Aser. So Chizkiya Yamar Kaman. So El Lahacha B'Royin Kimifagi. The Chizkiya Leisley Royin. Rabbi Yochanan Islay. So what does that mean, Royin? So says Rashi. It says like this: As we said before, do we look like this thing which is beheter as though it doesn't exist? So according to the sheet of Chizkiya, he holds that we don't say it's like it's not there. We consider it there. And v'she'eno minoi rabba olav mavatal. So therefore, it's mavatal. El kivan di yain kosher kaidem yain nesach. But since the kosher wine came first, the yain kosher havi rabba mayim. There was more kosher wine. Ki nafal yain nesach matzah minis minoi v'nior. It causes it to be aroused. However, Rabbi Yochanan holds is islay. He does hold of royin. Says Rashi. Kivan de nafal nesach laminoi v'shenamino. Since the wine fell into the minoi, other wine, and also the water, royin es mino kil eno. We envision the wine, the good wine, as though it's not there. V'shenu mino rabul mavatli. It's the she'enu mino, which is water, is more than the yain nesach, and therefore it's mavatl. So therefore, the whole opinion is whether we say royin. Do we consider the heter wine that's in there ki'ilu like it's not there, and therefore because of that the water will be more and can be mavatal, or do we say that no, that the wine of the yain nesach together with the wine which is good, they do combine, and since there's more wine than water in that way, because we do say royin, so that's us, and it's not bottle. So where it says Umi Isla Rabbi Yochanan royin v'haboy minei Rabbi Asim Rabbi Yochanan shnei kaisais. Let's say you have two cups, echad shel chulin v'echad shel truma. Mizgon, you diluted them. The irvan zebazeh. So now the question is, you don't know which one's which. You know that one of these cups is chulin that a non-kohen can consume, and one, however, is truma. So what does he do? So mahu lo pashale mikara lo pashale b'sei pashale. So he said, well, it's pretty strange, right? The fact that he didn't answer this question, right? Why didn't he answer this question? If Rabbi Yochanan held the din of, if you held that Rabbi Yochanan holds royin, So therefore the heter is like it's not there, therefore the ayin nesach is less than the water, and therefore it's batel. So then what's this whole question? If you have two kosas, one's chul and one's truma, and you mixed it all in, so we should just say that we envision the heter as though it's not there. Okay, so therefore, even though that's true, so v'loy pashale, so we call pashale b'sei pashale. So maybe originally you're right, he didn't know, he didn't have that type of a response, but eventually he did. Okay, so that's the answer. Itmar nami went similar to this. Rav Yochanan, Rav Yochanan, base coast truma, and then you umazgan the even they're all mixed in. So royin as a heter, we takadu say royin. We look at the wine of heter of chul and kil enol. It's not there. The sharmayim rabbanon mavatul noiso, and therefore you can eat it even though there's truma in it. Zeklal min b'minoi b'mashu. Shoy b'minu b'nais and tam. So that's what you said. If they had, obviously, it can only be a nice and tam if they have two different things. One's min, it's min sheno minoi. If it's min b'minoi, there's no such thing as nice and tam. They both are the same thing. They may taste the same and everything, same name, same taste. So therefore, because of that, it's always going to be b'mashu. Now, on this we have Yisaytis Dikamachoikus Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan Shalkish. Rabbi Shmuel, the Tavayu Kolosin Shabbatayra. Every time that we have an issue in the Torah of issue of a heter is b'minon is b'mashu, min b'min is b'mashu, shol b'minon is b'neis and tam. So therefore, our Mishnah is actually not just talking about yain nesach; it's talking about kol isurin shibatayra. When it comes to all the isurin in the Torah, the din is this: that min b'mino is b'mash, min shemin aminai will be b'neis and tam or b'shishim. So the question is, zek klal isui mai? What's it coming to include? So isui kol isurin shibatayra. It's coming to include kol isurin shibatayra. Basically, that's the whole point. That this din, you shouldn't think is exclusive only to yain nesach. No, it applies to all the Torah. It's to kol Torah kula, and therefore that's the extra drasha that's derived from this section. Okay, all right. So that's one explanation. Rabbi Yochanan Shalkish Tavayu kol isurin shibatayra min b'minoi bein shelo b'minon is b'neis and tam, which is pretty unbelievable, right? So when it comes to min b'minoi, not just min sheno mino, which is nice and tam, you can taste the difference. You ask a non-Jewish expert to taste it, right? But even min b'minoi is b'neis and tam. What do you mean? If it's the same thing, how's it nice and tam? So what it means is that it has the status of shishim. So we generally say that when it's a 1:60 ratio, then at that point no longer does it produce a tam in the food, which was usher. We say it's mutter if it's b'neis and tam. If it's which we're translating as ech b'shish. So we have this big machlokus, Rav Yochanan Shalkish against Rav Shmuel. What's the din when it comes to min b'minoi? Is min b'minoi take b'mashu, or is it only b'neis and tam, once in the 60th? Chutz metevel v'yain nesach, with the exclusion of tevel and yain nesach, b'minon b'mashu, shul b'minon b'neis and tam. So we see that when it comes to yain nesach, we say that that min b'mino we're more strict by yain nesach. It's Avodah Zarah, right? So therefore, min b'minoi is going to be usher b'mashahu, as opposed to everything else. Kol Torah kula, according to them, would be kol Torah kula would be different. V'zek klal yisui tevel. So it says that klal is coming to include tevel, that the din is again min b'minoi is b'mashahu. Tani was the Rabbi Shmuel, Tani was the Rabbi Yochanan Shalkish. Tani was the Rabbi Shmuel. Kol isurin shibatayra b'mino, and if it's min b'mino, it's b'mashu. Shol b'mino is in tam. Tani was the Rabbi Yochanan Shalkish. Kol isurin shibatayra bein b'min min shol b'mino b'nois in tam. It's always nice in tam. Chutz mitevel v'yain nesach, that we're strict. That when it comes to tevel and yain nesach, even though according to them, min b'mino is not asur b'mashu, but only b'nois in tam. That's not true when it comes to tevel and yain nesach. B'minon is b'mashu, shelo b'minon is b'neis and tam. So again, in this situation, he says that min b'minoi is b'mashahu because we're more strict. So I understand why we're strict by Avodah Zarah, because again, it's Avodah Zarah. El tevel my tam. Why are we strict by tevel? Like what's the big deal with that? Gemara says katero kachisuro. just like it was mutter, so it was also. What does that mean? Yomer Shmuel, chita achas poiteres zakri. That when it comes to the din of truma, all you need is to remove one single kernel of grain, and then that will pater a massive pile. Says Rashi, chita achas poiteres zakri mitruma. So you're not chayiv in truma once you separate even the smallest amount. Dahalus pirish shiura dida, because it wasn't explained the measurement. El rashis digun chaksiv. It just says the beginning of your grains, which is mashma field koldu, even the smallest amount. Rabbanan hu diamri yain yafa echad mirboyim, that it should be one. If really it's 1/40th if you're generous. Ayin raz echad mishishim 1/60th if you're a little bit stingy, and benis echad mechamishim is 1/50th. Okay. So again, kehateru kachisur. The Amr Shmuel chitachs manas zakri b'tanim mihachi b'ma amru tevel aser b'chol shehu. When do we say that tevel is aser b'chol shehu? That's b'minoi. Shol ben minoi is b'noisen tam. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's maybe see another couple questions. Question 10. Yain nesach aser v'aser kol dehu. Yain b'yayin zak klal min b'mino b'mashu. So what is that coming to include? So according to Rabbi Shmuel, it's kol yisun shebatayra. That min b'mino is b'mashu, min shein b'mino is b'noisen tam. However, Shalach Rabbi Yochanan says that even min b'mino is b'noisen tam, and not b'mashu is coming to include tevel didaini hachi. Okay, that's the din. Okay, Ta 25. Yain nesach shenafu labor v'nafal sham kitan shomayim ha'im batal. Right. So you have yain nesach that fell into the pit, and then water fell into it. So this is really what we said before. This gimel shitas. L'chad ma'anim b'talim nafal ma'im tchila. Question is, did the water fall in first before the wine? Then roines a heter kil eno. Do we say that the heter wine is like it's not there, and therefore there's more water than wine? The im nafal yain tchil. If the wine fell in first, matzah min es minoi veneer. So those two wines will cancel each other out. L'chad man di omer oilum mutter. L'chad man di omer oilum aser. Okay, that was question TA, and question TB 28. Elu yisurim b'chol dehu yain nesach v'avodah zarah mat sada shava b'chol elu. We didn't do that. The question above that, 27. Yain nesach aser v'aser b'chol shehu zeklal. So zeklal is lesuyimai, either kol surin shibatayra or tevel, which is TB 27. C 28 we do not have. Ad kan.